Hello and welcome to Socialism, the podcast of the Socialist Party. Hit subscribe today to never miss an episode. I'm Oscar, a Socialist Party member, and today's podcast is a discussion with PCS National Vice President Dave Semple, speaking in a personal capacity. From 16th of April 2025, ballot papers will go out. The Public and Commercial Service Union, PCS, members to vote for a new National Executive Committee and President. PCS organises workers in the civil service, in government agencies and other public sector bodies, and those on outsourced government contracts. Labour Cabinet Office Minister Pat McFadden's radical reforms and Rachel Reeves' spring statement promised the worst cuts since austerity, a £2 billion axe to the civil service. This includes 15% cuts to governmental departmental budgets, tens of thousands of jobs to go, the abolition of NHS England with the loss of half the workforce, below inflation pay rises, and more. And this was all promised before the onset of the economic chaos and potential downturn following Trump's tariffs. So elections are taking place this spring in a number of unions, the first time under Starmer's government, and they're an opportunity for members to elect a fighting leadership that is going to stand up to Starmer and lead a serious campaign to defend members. The Socialist Party is supporting the Broad Left Network, a coalition of union activists in the PCS who want to fight back against Starmer's attacks. And Socialist Party members will be leafleting PCS workplaces up and down the country to support this electoral challenge. So get involved today.
Hi Dave, thanks for joining me today.
Nice to be here.
So my first question is, what are Starmer's plans for civil service cuts?
Well, look, you will have seen yesterday the announcement affecting the Cabinet Office. Now, the Cabinet Office is a very important government department. It has a large degree of oversight over the other government departments. It has 6,500 staff, and the government have announced changes that will result in 900 of those staff being moved out of the Cabinet Office and potentially job cuts for 1,200 other staff. Now, if you listen to what the government are saying, they are saying that this will be via natural attrition. That is the term that we use for people when they leave to go to other jobs, when they retire and things like that. But also it will be through managed exits in whatever form that might take. The press are using the word redundancies. Redundancy as a specific term in the civil service. And most of our job cuts have been done historically through voluntary exits, not redundancies. So exits are not a step on the route to compulsory redundancy, if you see what I mean. But nevertheless, that's still 1,200 job cuts. That's still 1,200 people who don't have jobs. It's still, a large amount of work in the Cabinet Office that's not being done. What worries me is that yesterday, the officials from the Cabinet Office and ministers responsible for the Cabinet Office said that this is the Cabinet Office leading by example. If you scale that up, you're talking about 20% job cuts across the civil service. And the civil service at the moment, if you do some rounding, is about 500,000 staff strong. So you're talking about cutting 100,000 jobs across the civil service. That would be unprecedented. Even Gordon Brown, when he stood up at Labour conference and announced 100,000 job cuts and was given a standing ovation, I swear it was Labour conference, it might have been in Parliament actually, but he was widely applauded for the idea of cutting 100,000 civil service jobs, didn't actually reach that figure. So what we're seeing here is potentially a wide-ranging attack on civil service jobs, to say nothing of what's going to happen on important questions like pay. And as you will particularly know, as all of the comrades in the Socialist Party will know, there are also attacks on the services that the civil service deliver. So we've seen plans to cut $5 billion from the personal independence payment and ESA bills, so that this is money paid to disabled and sick claimants, people who are either too unwell to work or who have significant disability, and that impacts their daily life. They're planning to cut $5 billion from the payments that go to those people. So it's not just civil servants' jobs on the line. It's not just civil service pay on the line. It's also public sector work that's on the line. So that will have a dramatic impact for ordinary working class people, the length and breadth of the UK. That's what Starmer seems to have announced, which is a surprise given that when he took up his post as Prime Minister, Keir Starmer talked about showing respect to the civil service. I don't see much evidence of that respect in the announcements that we've seen. And certainly there has been none in terms of engagement between the civil service and the recognised trade unions, including my own, which is PCS, the Public and Commercial Services Union, of which I am National Vice President.
So what kind of industrial and political strategy is necessary for the PCS union to fight back against these attacks from a Labour government?
Well, I think it's exactly that, a political industrial strategy. We need to have a strategy to begin with. And this is an argument that's been going on in the union for a period of time. There are national elections going on in PCS just now, and there are two blocks, if you like, of people standing in those elections. There are those who want a strategy to fight back, and there are those that don't really seem to want to fight back at all, although they talk a good game. So I stand as one of those who is trying to build that fight back. I'm a member of the Socialist Party, as you know. I'm a member of the Broad Left Network within PCS, and collectively the Socialist Party and the Broad Left Network participate in an alliance with other left organisations, including the Independent Left and Independent Socialists in HM Revenue and Customs. Collectively, we are standing to demand a strategy to fight back. Now, we have put forward any amount of steps to build that fight back over the past year, because I want to be really, really clear. Myself and others predicted a massive attack on jobs, which is what we're now seeing. We were told that we were being that we were scaremongering whenever we said things like that, but we have seen the attack on jobs coming because governments, both Conservative and Labour traditionally, don't turn around and tax the billionaires and the bankers whenever they have public finance problems. They turn around and they start hacking away at public sector jobs and attacking the services that public sector workers deliver, including in the civil service. So that has an obvious implication for jobs. The way that I think we'll be forced to fight back against that, it's not the choice that any civil servant would make, but the way I think we'll be forced to fight back against that is via strike action. It is via a serious national industrial strategy covering all government departments, all arm's length bodies, all executive agencies, basically all of the parts of the civil service in those places that ordinary people would think are civil service but don't have that technical designation, that we will organise a national strategy to build strike action across those areas. Now, I put forward a motion to the union's national executive in January, which would have taken some steps in that direction to begin to prepare the union for that. This was turned into a farce by the General Secretary, Fran Heathcote, and by the National President, Martin Kavanagh. The consultation that they launched was literally just asking branches and groups, these are the different parts of the union based on what employer members work in, asking them, whether they thought that there was potential for strike action. That absolutely wasn't the purpose of the motion, nor was it the aim of what I was trying to do. There are two roles that any union rep has, one of which is to represent the views of members, but the other of which is to lead, to know what is needed to be done to win the demands that members put forward. In this case, protection of jobs. In this case, defensive pay, so they don't have a below inflation pay award and things like that. And to argue about what strategy we should need in front of those members, to convince members of a strategy that would work. It's that second bit that myself and others are heavily engaged with, which the current General Secretary and the current National President are not remotely engaged with. They don't have that approach of trying to put forward a strategy and then going out to advocate for it and to win people to it. And by people, I mean ordinary members. I mean the ordinary activists of the union, the people who don't sit on the leading executive committees of the union, but are the absolute backbone of the kind of industrial and political strategy that we should build. Now, there are places right now which are on strike. There are places right now where there are serious disputes. It would be silly not to comment, for example, on Benton Park View, which is a big revenue and customs site. I think it's about 5,000 staff there. There are strikes going on at that site because the employer sacked 3 union reps for union duties. Now, myself and others have supported and ensured that the union paid for strike action taking place there, have ensured that we're supporting those sacked reps so that they're not, losing their homes and things like that by virtue of the work that they've done from the union when the employer came for them, have ensured that a barrister and that legal advice has been provided as they go through the employment tribunal process and things like that. But what we've also called for is a serious political strategy there. What effort are we putting into what we call the PCS parliamentary group to make sure that the government is put under pressure to have these reps reinstated? We have had some steps in that direction. So, for example, I gather that John McDonnell, who's an MP, a Labour MP, is a member of the PCS parliamentary group, by the way, asked for a meeting with the minister responsible for HM Revenue and Customs and was refused a meeting, which I think that's the first time that's happened, that a member of parliament has been refused a meeting with a minister covering an area to discuss a key issue in that area. But we seem to have sat back and gone, oh, well, we can't really do anything else then. That's absolutely not an approach I am comfortable with at all. I think that far more should be done. Where are our mass demonstrations? Where is our mobilisation at the union? Where are we organising public meetings to put enormous pressure on Labour MPs? How are we forcing the government to take cognizance of the serious issue facing our three reps and the members at Benton Parkview? And you can replicate that answer up to virtually any dispute that the union is fighting. We have an enormous battle going on in facilities management, covering 10 sites in London and East Kilbride. We have battles going on in HM land land registry. We have battles going on in the Office for National Statistics. There's loads of struggles going on right now. And when you talk about an industrial strategy, you want to begin joining them up, because what you understand is that they're happening in the context of a government that is trying to make cuts, that is not willing to incur any additional expense, even to put things right that the previous government did wrong, and which, before the election, the Labour leadership would have had no problem in saying that the previous government did wrong. And so with this cuts mentality, with this mentality of opposition to the civil service, we're going to get nothing unless we fight. So you want to link these industrial struggles up. That's key. But that means mobilising. It means making that argument, having that discussion with 180,000 members of PCS and all of the activists, and winning that argument. And how you win that argument is you convince them that the National Union is not going to do what it has done historically under Fran Heathcote and Martin Cabana, which is to say they'll sit back and they'll say, oh, we'll support any dispute, which what they mean is if you organise your own area to go into dispute, then you put in the submission to go on strike. Yeah, they'll vote that through. But in terms of mobilising the actual muscle of the union to win that dispute, there's nothing happening. There's nothing there. They'll happily turn up on picket lines and have their photo taken. They'll have the odd parliamentary lobby where they'll have their photo taken with the lead reps in every area. There's lots of photo opportunities going on, and that should surprise no one since it's national election season. But there's not any real work going either industrially or politically on the part of the national leadership of the union, and that's not acceptable. That has to be stopped, and that's where the union elections come in.
So you mentioned there that you're running as part of the Broad Left Network in these upcoming union elections. How did this grouping come about, and you've already gone over a bit how they're trying to change the union, but what do you hope to get out of these elections?
Well, I hope that we'll win a decisive majority. There's 35 members on the NEC. I want to win all 35 spaces, including the position of national president, because everything that myself and others have put forward on the national executive has been vetoed by the current national president. So whenever we had, at the very, very beginning of the electoral term for this national executive, which we took office in late May of 2024, the first NEC meeting that we had in early June, myself and others proposed that we should take industrial action during the general election. So we had a mandate covering 20,000 members. We had fallen short of winning a mandate for another 100,000 members, but we had a mandate covering 20,000 members. Myself and others proposed that we should take action amongst those 20,000 in concert with the junior doctors who were out on strike at the time, with the railway workers who were out on strike at the time. And we put that proposal to the national executive. That proposal was never voted on. It was vetoed by the national president. Now, there's no rule in PCS that permits the national president to veto anything. Nevertheless, he did it. And whenever we challenged his ruling, we have a majority in the NEC, but we don't have a 2/3 majority. Because we didn't have the 2/3 majority to overturn his ruling, the ruling stood, and so the motion was vetoed. That has happened at virtually every NEC that we have had this year. Every time we've tried to take a step forward politically or industrially, the president's veto has cropped up. And so that has to go. We must win the position of national president. Marion Lloyd, who is a Socialist Party member, a member of BLN, and participates in the majority left coalition, she's standing as the united candidate for national president. So we need to get her elected. We also need a 2/3 veto-proof majority, because democracy has to reign in PCS. It has to be the NEC making decisions and not simply the General Secretary making decisions, as she has on things like staffing in the union, where she's given her two best mates a promotion in PCS, so giving them basically a pay rise for their support of her, and where the NEC has not been consulted, where there's been changes to PCS staffing, where the NEC has not been consulted, even though the NEC is the supreme democratic body of the union. And all of that is being done because the national president refuses to call a meeting of the Policy and Resources Subcommittee of the NEC and vetoes any motion put forward at the actual NEC itself to take control of what's happening in the union, whether it's industrially, politically, internally, or anywhere else. So that's what we absolutely must do in these elections if we're serious about having a genuine national industrial political strategy to defeat the cuts, but also if we want a democratic fighting PCS.
So you mentioned there that you and Marion are both members of the Broad Left Network, but also members of the Socialist Party. So what are members of the Socialist Party? What's their role in these broader organisations in the union?
Well, I mean, Socialist Party members in PCS are just like any other member of PCS, really. But most of them stand to be union reps, and most of them understand the importance of building working class unity across all of our workplaces, across all of our employers, and uniting to fight back when the employers, who are also usually the government, but we do have members in privatised areas and members who don't work for Westminster in the devolved sectors, whenever those governments come for our members, whenever they try and make cuts to their pay, whenever they try and erode their terms and conditions, whenever they try and make cuts to their jobs, whenever they attack public services, our Socialist Party members are at the forefront of trying to build the unity amongst members and to build the fight back to defeat those attacks and defeat those cuts. So that's the role of Socialist Party members. It's no different from any other member, any other rep. We have exactly the same rights as anybody else. We just try and put ourselves at the front of that battle because we understand how important it is. And the BLN is largely similar. The Broad Left Network is just made up of ordinary activists across the union in many different groups, from DWP, from HMRC, from my own group, which is the education group. You know, we bring together activists who understand the need to have, one, a democratic union, because a democratic union is responsive to the needs of members, but two, a fighting union, one that will not simply fight things in words, but will fight things in deed as well. That is to say, will organise campaigns and strategies to defeat what is happening when those things are to the detriment of our members.
Nice. And what would you say to Socialist Party members around the country who are going to go out giving out leaflets outside PCS workplaces trying to support the elections? Do you have any advice for them?
Listen very carefully to what members are saying whenever you speak to them. I love leaflet in our offices. I often say, I have to spend a lot of time with the employer because I do negotiations and things like that. I also have to spend a lot of time with the president, general secretary, and the most senior officers of PCS, which I think sometimes you kind of wind up wanting to bang your head against the wall, whereas spending time with members is the cure for that feeling. Being out amongst members, hearing what they have to say, identifying what it is we can do to fix the things that they are suffering from is vital. So to any Socialist Party member out there, leafleting, absolutely put forward our arguments, which is that we need a fight back. It doesn't matter who's in government. It doesn't matter whether it's Labour, Tory, or, as some people are worrying now, that the next one's going to be Reform. When there are cuts afoot, then we have to fight back, because it is in the interest of ourselves as workers in the civil service, but it's also in the interest of the wider working class, that we have to unite the fight back. So it shouldn't just be us in the civil service. There are other areas under attack. That the massive attack that was announced there on NHS England affects both NHS staff and civil servants. So there's grounds for unity across the different groups of workers in different trade unions, between us and Unison and Unite and GMB. We have to unite the fight back and build that fight back in the widest possible basis. So make that argument to PCS members, but also listen to what it is that they're saying, because they will be saying very clearly how these things impact them in the workplace, and having that information, letting that influence us as socialists is very, very important. So I guess thank you to everyone, what PCS members, Socialist Party members, everyone who is trying to help build a fighting democratic PCS. Keep up the hard work. I mean, we've been out every day leaflet in different workplaces. This is going to go on for the next few weeks. It's hard work, because you're up at the screak of dawn, usually traveling to somewhere that maybe not even your own workplace, as I have, as others have, and you're handing out leaflets to make sure that of our 180,000 members, we want all of them to vote. Traditionally, union elections are not very well turned out. You get about 6-7% of union members voting. I want 180,000 people to vote in this election and to demonstrate with one voice that they want a fighting democratic PCS.
Great. Thanks, Dave. Well, thanks for joining me today.
No worries. It's happy to be here, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon, Comrade.
For sure. Good luck in the election.
Cheers.
If you're not yet a member of the Socialist Party and agree with the points raised today, then get in touch on our website, www.socialistparty.org.uk, to find out what being a member will mean for you. Our website's packed with more political analysis, and you can subscribe to our weekly paper, The Socialist, and our monthly magazine, Socialism Today, getting them delivered to your door or an e-subscription to your email. The Socialist Party has no big business backers. All of our work is funded by donations from individual supporters. And if you agree that we need an alternative to war, capitalism, and endless cuts for the poor, make a donation today.